So Aaron and his wife Sally have been with us part of Everyday for about a decade or so, right? Initially with our church over in Porterville in the Valley, and then they were missionaries in China. They came here to the Central Coast to be part of our leaders school, our fourth leaders school, and they stuck around. We didn't put them off when they came for 9 months, and they stuck around and became part of our church family here at Everyday on the Central Coast. And Aaron has done so much to sow into our church family. He really went on a journey himself of healing and character development. And on the way, he figured out a way to do all that kind of stuff that actually works. And so he started character formation, coaching groups here at the church and beyond. Many of you have been through that. You've even been trained up in knowing how to run those groups as well. And actually, we've just seen incredible fruit from that. And we're so thankful to Aaron for pouring his life out in that way, for investing in himself and in his family and in our church in doing all of that. Aaron's also been an elder for about the last 9 months here at Everyday. But Aaron and Sally live down in Bulletin, and they're expecting their second baby very, very soon, which is super exciting. Aaron, actually, not only does he work in Bulletin, but live in Bulletin, he works in Santa Barbara. And life for them is just shifting more and more to that kind of direction. And so this is actually Aaron's last Sunday with us here at Everyday. And so I thought it was only appropriate that we got to hear from him one more time. We gave him the pulpit, as it were, to preach this Sunday on his final Sunday. So could we just stretch out your hands towards Aaron? We're just going to pray for him, bless him, and Sally and Genesis, and baby number 2 on the way as well. So Father, we thank you for the Eggmans. We thank you for all that they have poured into the Everyday Church movement here on the Central Coast and further afield. We thank you for their passion for you, their desire to follow you, Jesus. We thank you for Aaron's dedication to this church family, even when it's been so hard just to make that trip, and even when Sally's not been feeling well and things have been tough and challenging, he's followed through on his commitment. And so we thank you for his faithfulness. We thank you for his leadership. We thank you for his teaching. God, we thank you for the character formation, coaching, groups, and all that Aaron kick-started with that. And we just bless the Eggmans. God, we bless their family with another baby on the way. We bless this next stage in the journey, church life for them. We bless his job, his career, and as that develops down in Santa Barbara. Holy Spirit, would you just bless them? Would you fill him now? Anoint him to preach and to teach, to bring the word that you've laid on his heart to us today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Okay, hold on. Here we go. Now I'm on. All right, guys. You guys know that saying, going around the mountain? That's kind of the idea of, instead of like going up the mountain and down the other side, having completed a long journey, feeling good. I've just went up and down, and now I'm exhausted, but hey, I climbed that mountain, and I'm past that. There's future mountains in the future, but that mountain is gone, right? In contrast to going around the mountain and going around it again, and going around it again, and going around it again. In other words, facing the same obstacle or same character issue or the same issue again and again in your life, just in a different form, with a different face, or that type of thing. And so I like to talk about going around a mountain. I think often happens when when things get hard, instead we throw in the towel, or we kind of move on, or we kind of don't stick through the difficult, and that can be relationally, that can be organizationally, that can be a church-wise. There's just so many different ways in things where we come to something hard in our life, and I'm going to buckle in, I'm going to dial in, and I'm going to stick through the hard and get to the gold. And that's kind of like, when we do that, we work out our own character issues, which is usually the issue, and we are able to crest it, get to the other side and walk down the mountain. And I really think learning how to stay in imperfect situations with imperfect people is often what is needed to develop internal character that you need in order to not just a place, an organization, a people, a group, but like in all areas of life, like it translates in jobs. I mean, there's so many people who go from job to job to job to job to job, and or church to church to church to church, or relationship to relationship to relationship. I mean, look at the statistics when it comes to marriage and divorce. Like, there's so many different things where it's like we go around the mountain, and a lot of times, I'm not saying at all times, but a lot of times, like our character is what does that. And I'm going to be talking. So we're gonna let's see if get this on here. So I'm going to be talking about the benefits of belonging for the long haul. This church is the longest haul I've ever been a part of, and I really do feel like I have experienced so many benefits of belonging in a church for 10 years, and it has affected my life so much to the point where I really feel like this is a commissioning from this church out of this church into a missions field, which I'm going to get into in a minute. I don't feel by any means that I'm leaving this church, not at all. I am being launched out of this church as a leader in this church in order to reach a people group, and I'm going to talk about that here in just a moment, as well as a couple of life things, which I'll get into as well. But this church is my church family, will be my church family, and has a home in my heart and will continue to go with me. I'm going to continue to, everywhere I go and anyone I interact with, take what I've learned here and continue to propagate the everyday DNA in which has become very much part and parcel of who I am and is part of everything that I do. And so I really do believe that belonging here at Everyday for the last 10 years has been the number one thing that has catalyzed me into success in my personal life, in my professional life, and in my family life. And I'm going to break that down. That's pretty incredible, right? For me to make that claim that a church has the power to do that in somebody's life. Like, that is really cool. And it's a really, really, really powerful. And so this Sunday does kind of mark that commissioning for me at my work. I came in, I started ILS 4. I ended up delivering furniture as my job. I had always expected to go back to China, continue to be a professor at a university, and then work with the underground church. Through that process, I discovered that I had a whole lot of things that I needed to buckle in on and focus in on and do that deep character work, because I had been going around the mountain many times in my life over the same issues, and God said, I'm going to use a local church in your life in order to help you go up the mountain, down it, and then you're going to begin to thrive. And so at my work, I started. I was like, when I chose to stay here to focus in, especially on my marriage in the beginning, I was worried because I'd worked at a Chick-fil-A for I think 6 to 8 years back in probably 6 years during college and a little bit after, and my skills were I was a teacher over in China, but I only had my bachelor's degree. I didn't really have a whole lot of work experience. And I'm like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? I was like, am I going to go back to Chick-fil-A? I remember having those dreams in the middle of the night, and I would wake up in a panic because I was back working at Chick-fil-A. I'm like, no, Lord, no. And I didn't know what I was going to do, and I was like, I can't deliver furniture. I'm not the person who you call to move stuff. I'll sit with people, I'll counsel people, I'll love people. I'm great with groups of people, but man, put me in physical labor working really hard. I am awful at that. It is not my gifting. I don't have the gift of helps. And so I was seriously waking up in a sweat thinking about what am I going to do? And God opened up a cool door. Ended up getting a job at my high school I showed up for the interview, and I actually showed up for an ESL teacher with a different organization. The school was gracious. They said, hey, you've got a really great profile. How about we make up a job for you? So they made up a job position for me, gave me a teaching Chinese job as well as an English job from the school, not from the organization that I actually was interviewing with. And then slowly but surely, as I did my own character work, which I really believe that this church catalyzed me into doing, slowly but surely I got favor in my job and in my workplace where now they have just decided to pay for me to go back. So I did get my master's degree in executive coaching and consulting, or certificate in counseling as well. But they're sending me back now to get a certificate for Christian school management and administration. And so they're investing in me because I believe that they've stated that they would like me to continue to move up at the school, which is really cool. It's a Christian school. It's a missions field that every year I've been able to go and kind of preach the gospel to the kids and have an altar call and see people raise their hands and give their life to Jesus each and every time. And I just feel the more influence and the more doors that God continues to open, and I've probably switched positions probably 4 times as they just continue to give me more and open up more doors, that now with this stated purpose of, hey, let's send you back, let's get this certificate, let's open up some more doors in this, I really feel like this is me being commissioned from Everyday into this missions field. And so it actually does start in January. January 1st is when my graduate school next program begins, and so I'm going to begin to buckle down. You pair that with, I don't know how many people were here when I preached on the fervent petitioning. I talked about how if we get a prayer, we hold a prayer, we continue to bring that prayer before God on a day-to-day basis where we just knock on that door. I'm talking about when you wake up, at meals, and Sally can testify to that, my wife, before you go to bed, with your kids. I mean, you let it known. We are praying for this, and we're going to knock on the doors of heaven until we see that happen. Well, I told you up here that my fervent petition, which I knew was going to happen, it was just a matter of time, was that we were going to have another baby. And we are. And so we're having a little girl, my second little girl, and that was actually my little, my daughter Genesis's fervent petition was, she said, I actually want a sister. And she goes, and I'm going to pray for it. I said, well, all right, you could pray for it. And she did, and we're having a girl. And so we're really excited about that. That paired with, so I kind of go at a little bit of a breakneck pace of life. Those of you who know me know that I have I'm involved in 1,000 things. I run stuff over here, I run stuff over here, I do this and I do that. And I've been involved like that for a long time. The difficulty is when it comes to, my health has stayed okay, but unfortunately my wife was trying to run that race with me. And so we had attended Everyday together for 8 years, and we both loved the church, been involved in everything. I think my wife was probably involved in every ministry that ever existed here, and PowerPoint especially, and just she was just really, we both poured into in this church. But her health started to have issues a couple years ago, where it was literally about 50% of the year she was sick, and 50% she was not sick. And so we decided 2 years ago to say, you know what, sweetheart, you just these 5 hours that we're doing, 5, 6, 7 hours, because it was it's 5 hours now for me, but back then it was 5 hours plus 2 or 3 when I would run a group or 2, and then have a session afterwards after church. So it would be many, many hours that she would spend here on a Sunday, and so we just decided as a family that it was best for her to focus in on health. And praise the Lord, her health did improve, and so her health has been doing better. But that has made it really difficult for me where on a Sunday I'm away from my family 5 hours every Sunday. And that's been a struggle. We've both agreed that it's that we're for this, that she's been behind me, but it's just been hard. And so with our second one on the way and her having issues, luckily we did get a diagnosis. We are now treating it, and she's doing a little bit better. But it's been really rough for those of you who know me. It's been kind of rough for that last number of weeks with her pregnancy. That it is time in a couple of different ways with that grad school program for me to be home on Sundays, and then for me to kind of have that missions field be commissioning and sent out. So I wanted to make sure that everyone kind of understood that this will and all is will be and will always and forever be a church family for me. I want to continue to visit. I continue wanting to pop in, see everybody. I'm behind this church. I'm behind Rich. I'm behind Zoe with all my heart. And that brings me kind of to a little bit of today's main text. I have two main texts, and I'm going to be talking about lessons from belonging. And so we can go to the next. So God sets the lonely in families. This was the verse of this church when I came. God sets the lonely in family. I didn't know I was a lonely person. I didn't know that I had a lot of areas that God wanted to bring me out of loneliness in. And being planted in a church over the long haul, and I'm talking 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, has let God get deep into my heart and into those places of deep loneliness that I didn't even know existed. And this is one of the most beautiful things. Number one, God sets, God puts, God places. God is the instigator. He's the one orchestrating our spiritual family. He puts us into places, and it's for our good. And I know there are situations where there's not good, that like it's unacceptable, not good, where it's like really bad, where you do have to leave. But when I know this church, I've been part of this church for a very long time. This is a good church. Obviously, there's things that you might not like, which you're going to learn to accept and love and then thrive in the middle of, as in all relationships, as in all anything that you're involved in, all workplaces, all relationships, all marriages. But this is a good church that will do the things that I'm talking about as you belong and as you go for the long haul. There are so many beautiful things that will end up happening. The benefit number one is for people will walk with you through the good, the bad, and the ugly. That is like such a huge thing for people to actually journey with you and to walk with you, and for you to actually get exposed, letting your bad and ugly come out. I mean, that ugly, when that comes out sometimes, I mean, it gets really ugly down there. I know it did for me at least, I hear some people relating. It can, and we need people in our life to be able to see the bad and the ugly and to accept us, to love us, to walk with us, to journey with us, to counsel us, to walk with us. And that's what happened with me. The bad and the ugly came out at the end of ILS 4. I was kind of trying to like hold it together. And I'm like, okay, I know there's marriage issues. I know we've had these marriage issues before we came to the church, before we came to ILS 4. And if we can just get through, I think we'll go back to China. We can work it out there. Like I had this okay, just hold it together for just a little bit longer. But God said no. He let the bad and the ugly come out. Our marriage was in dire need of focus and support at the end of that leadership school 10 years ago, and we needed help. And Pastor Mark and Pastor Rich and Pastor Zoe gave us time, love, support, and I think and even created a marriage seminar pretty much, I think, for us. I mean, maybe you wanted to do it anyway, but I know that we were struggling at that time, and you guys created that. I think that was for us. But anyway, they poured out so much love for us. I mean, I remember in the car with my wife, we wouldn't talk to each other, put something in between us, get on the couch, and we were like sitting on the opposite sides of the couch, kind of back to each other. I mean, it was bad. And I remember Rich being like, yeah, it's going to take some time, and we were able to, with the love and support, the bad and the ugly coming out, us doing that deep character work, that comes when we have these kind of meetings, and going through a marriage group, putting into practice all that we were learning, getting counseling a little bit as well. We did this stuff, and God used this church so much, and that bad and ugly needs a safe place to come out. And a church family that is safe enough for your bad and ugly to come out is worth more gold than this world can contain. And that's what I've found here at this church. What we have here at this church is a church that is safe enough to let that bad and ugly come out and to feel love and acceptance and to meet transformation. I did not see that or experience that in my upbringing because my parents, and they continue to, they have a love for going to different churches. And so there's benefits to that, of being a part of a lot of churches. So I would probably say I probably had about 6 churches in my upbringing, which we did a lot of activities, and there's a lot of, fun things about having a lot of different events where you're involved in. But it never gave me the same opportunity that I've had in the 10 years that I've belonged here to really get known, to be exposed, to be loved, to be transformed. And so I really think there's something special that God has done about belonging in a spiritual family over the long haul. And there is 3 stages in relationship. I know Pastor Marcus talked about this a number of times, and probably where I got that is probably from him. And so there's the honeymoon phase where you come to a church, you're enamored by a leader, you're enamored by, or a workplace or a person, in relationship, and you meet someone you're interested in or something like that, and all you see is the good, and you're like, oh, it's kind of that head over the heels feeling. There's all the tingles, there's the dreaming, there's the excitement, but all you're seeing is the good of that individual, of that organization, of that church. And usually it's between 1 year and 3 years. Sometimes it can be accelerated, but it's usually you've got to be a part of a place for about 3 years before you start seeing the things that bother you or irritate you, or the things that irritate you about that person, but it's going to happen. And if you're still in that blissy phase of, oh no, we're perfect for each other, we're like exactly alike, and we love everything about each other, we have everything in common, or oh man, that church is just the best, that leader is so anointed, like oh my gosh, like where it's just, and again, they can be super anointed, and that's great, but have you yet seen the bad and the ugly of what it is that you're a part of? Because that's going to happen, as it does in all relationships, in all people, in all organizations, in all churches. There's some things that you would consider bad and ugly. Maybe it's things that rub you wrong, personality-wise. Maybe it's, there's a whole bunch of things that it can be. But at some point, you're going to feel disillusioned. And at that disillusionment phase, the bad and the ugly begins to come out inside of you and inside of maybe comes out in relationships with other people, and you have a choice to make. And I want to present today, if at that point there's a character issue inside, which usually it's the source, when you face that hurdle, if you decide to go around that hurdle is just going to appear again. You're going to go around that mountain again and again and again without getting to crest, go to the other side and face a new mountain, because that new mountain will come, but it's a new mountain, it's not the same mountain, and that's way better, right? And so I've worked with a whole lot of people in my counseling, coaching, life coaching, pastoral coaching, counseling, things, and I've seen this come up again and again. And sometimes, so there's been groups in which not everyone makes it to the end. The bad and the ugly come out, and a lot of people end up leaving that group. They committed. I even told them in the beginning, there's 12 groups. I don't want you to start this unless you commit to finishing it. Sign this paper. Yes, I understand this is hard. I want to commit to making it to all 12. And you know what? I think maybe about 80% of people make it, but about 20% of people don't make it through. And we're talking 12 weeks. Like, that's not a whole lot. And, maybe, so that, I like to think of those groups as kind of like a greenhouse. All the stuff that we face in our life kind of begins to come out really fast in those groups. And so I see that even in a specific group that's meant to help people go over that mountain and go down the other side, that unfortunately some people keep circling that mountain, and they leave when I know, hey, that's a character issue that you really need to face. And so Hebrews 10 is my second text, 24 through 25. And let us consider how we may spur one another on towards love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another all the more as you see the day approaching. This is powerful, not giving up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging each other. There is something so powerful about marriage. When you end up getting married to someone, seems like it's going to be really, really great. But for me, it was about 6 years in. For some people, it's, a couple weeks in, month in, a year in, But there's going to come a point where it's like, oh my gosh, like, I don't like a lot of this. I really don't. I don't like this. But God has made marriage to rub you wrong in all the right places at all the right times, so that we can buckle in, do the deep work inside of us, and then learn to accept and to thrive in a relationship in areas in which maybe we still don't like, but we can thrive in them, or we can still love that person in them, or we can, and I think this whole thing about don't not meet together. Keep in it. Keep in through the hard. Keep in through when don't let character be the thing that causes you to have to face the same mountain again and again. Instead, I think acceptance is this term that isn't really understood very well, because there's two types of bad. There's unacceptable bad, and then there's acceptable bad. When I'm working with people, sometimes people they are putting up with unacceptable bad that they need to actually learn how to say no to. There's individuals I've worked with in the past that are in maybe it's like the person continues to sleep with another person, and they keep forgiving them, and they sleep with another person, they forgive them again, and it's like when I talk to that person, I'm like, that person doesn't show any marks of change. There's nothing in their life that says they're going to change. It's like, why would you continue to do the exact same thing and forget what just happened when there's no evidence that anything is going to change? Now, it's very different if someone has a problem, because I've worked with a lot of people like this too, who actually do end up having an adulterous affair or something like that, who buckle in, say, you're right, I was wrong. It doesn't usually start like this. It usually takes a little bit of time to get here. But eventually there's a tipping point where they seek out the help that they need in order to do the deep character work, so that they can become a person who won't struggle with that again in the future. And that's a very different situation in which there's still going to be issues that are going to have to happen, because it doesn't just happen overnight. Character work takes some time. But that's a very different prognosis when you're dialing in and doing the deep, hard work. There is a very different prognosis when you don't see any signs of change. But on the opposite side, we have, and this is probably the majority of people that I work with, the majority of the people I work with are frustrated with a spouse, a close friend, somebody in their life, a workplace, a boss, a church, in which there's acceptable bad that they're struggling with. It's not horrible. Maybe it's personality clash. Maybe it's just something that just rubs you the wrong way. And it's actually not, it's not horrible, but it's bad, but it's not horrible. And in those places, we need to learn acceptance. The ability to see the bad and the ugly, even to say, wow, that still irritates me. I still don't like that. And I'm still going to learn to thrive in this with this person, in this organization, in this church. I'm going to begin to thrive. And there were, as in any church, as in any place, there were times in which I faced that in this church. One of those is when I first came, and we were going through our marriage issues, and I had always lived a life of doing ministry and kind of being in ministry. I just came from China where I had just been, led a whole bunch of things, and but coming into this church, Pastor Mark, Pastor Rich, Pastor Zoe, had saw that I needed to be incubated and to have a time where I was not doing ministry. I believe they saw my performance issue, that I had an identity issue when it came to performance. I was seeking performance love. And they said, we don't actually want you to get involved in any ministry right now in this church, and we just want you to focus in on your marriage. To me, that was bad. I'm like, what do you mean? I've always been involved in everything, in all those areas. But if I would have let that bad, again, it was bad to me, but it was really good for me, right? That's usually what ends up happening. But that bad, if I would have said, well, screw you, I know this other church is going to put me in leadership, and I would, kind of have left this church prematurely, or said, you know what, I'm going back to China. I'm not. And if I wouldn't have buckled in, stopped, focused in on that, and made it through that frustration or disillusionment, then I would have continued to face that issue in my life. Another key moment was when Pastor Mark, I believe he had a different tone than I heard it. I heard it as, you don't know how to show empathy for your wife in a not a nice tone, and what's wrong with you? But it was a curious tone that Pastor Mark was saying of I don't think you know how to show empathy to your wife. I think that was his tone. I think I heard it very differently, but that offended me at the time. I'm like, what do you mean? That actually offended me. And if I would have let that offense hit me and get me wrong and gone out of that, I would have missed I wouldn't be here today giving you this message, because those words are actually the words God used to really change my life in a really powerful way, as well as not being involved in ministry in the ways that I had been in my past, but God just saying, we're putting a pause on all that, and we're buckling in. Go ahead and go to the next one. And so, belonging in a church has this beautiful benefit of helping you to grow in places of identity. And that performance identity, I had no idea that I had that I would seek. Now I can see it in retrospect. When I started my grad school program, I chose the executive leader of the program, and I set out in my heart with everything inside of me to get more knowledge than him, to create a better program than him. I had this I'm gonna show him how good I can be, or at the church, there was always this but it was so good for me when I was told I don't want you involved in any ministry right now, and all the stuff that brought up inside of me when I'm not knowing what to do. I'm in all the pain in my marriage, and I needed to focus in on that because I actually did. And that began to come up, and I didn't have this defense mechanism of performing, of being a high performer, that it hurt, but it hurt so good. And there's a whole lot of hurt so good in life that is really good for us. And I think hurt so good is a really good thing that belonging to a church brings up. It actually brings out that hurt so good that we need. And so the church ended up helping me. It was interesting because all at that time, we also had Pastor Mark, Pastor Rich, Pastor Zoe meeting with me at the same time as this. And so although I didn't have that performance love, I did have love. I had acceptance in relationship with them. And that love got in. I remember the day that God kind of in a dream, I had a dream. God spoke to me through Pastor Mark's voice, and that voice said, Aaron, even when you can't offer anything, I love you. And somehow that word in that dream cut to the very heart of who I was and changed something deep inside of me. I think people call it going from an orphan to a son, or there's all these type of things that people talk about. But that moment was extremely catalytic for me, and it changed me in a very powerful, deep way. And that was because I had that love in my life, that acceptance in my life, people in my life who saw the bad and the ugly, and continued to stay with me in it. And it also took me saying, like, okay, there's stuff I don't like, I don't agree with, I don't want, I don't think it's right, and then buckling in and staying with it. Learning how to accept acceptable badness. Again, often it's what things that we think are bad, but actually it's just personality or something different. It ends up really enacting deep change inside of us. And it also catalyzed me into my future. And so, you can go ahead and go to the next. This was a powerful message. I remember when I was in ILS 4, Pastor Mark gave a message, and he talked about the local church being the instrument that God uses to put people through a knothole of pain, and then it will end up leading into your catalytic future, and that God's choice is for a local church to be part of that process, and a big part of that. And that is exactly what happened to me. And it's the funnel. Mark said it was the funnel. The local church is the funnel that really kind of brings out all those character things inside of us and gives us an opportunity to do the hard work that we need to do to overcome, to become who all God has called us to do. And those words where, Aaron, the curiosity statement that Pastor Mark made, Aaron, I don't think you know how to show empathy to your wife, led me to, as well as the mirror that I received back from these two, of like, you're doing good, keep at it, keep working hard, but yeah, there's some things you need to work on, right? That love, acceptance, and acknowledgement of, yeah, you got some issues. That ended up leading me to seek out the graduate school program. And that graduate school program did a big, it was in counseling at that time, and that ended up helping me to face those difficult things as well. And so it was cool how God used the church to be the instrument that ended up leading me. And God can do it in so many different ways, but how many times have you been in a service, God speaking to you, and God uses what's being said up front to to speak to you, to give you an exclamation point, to really focus you in on something in your life. And God does that again and again. And so the church actually is what led me into counseling, which led me into, they also were the ones that opened up the doors. I don't know how many of you guys have seen this video. It's called The First Follower, but it's this crazy guy dancing in the middle of a field. It's like a Woodstock type of thing. So it's like this band in the background. This crazy guy is just kind of over there just dancing away, right? And so the commentator on the video is like, see that, that one guy, like, alone is a crazy guy, right? It's like he just, there's no movement happening, there's nothing going on, but then all of a sudden you have some other guy, like, come up and start dancing right next to him, and he goes, and the first follower, and that first follower, and then all of a sudden, like, people, thousands and thousands and thousands of people start running out from everywhere, and they start dancing with the crazy guy doing the crazy stuff, and it's like, this is how a movement is formed, right? And like that first follower is so important because it helps create the movement, and the person by himself is a crazy person without a first follower. Where God used the church kind of as a first follower in a sense, because I might have been a crazy guy dancing in the middle of nowhere, saying, guys, this can change your life, this can change your life, but if I didn't have anybody to join a group, I was a crazy person in the middle of a field dancing crazy by myself. But Rich, Zoe, Mark, they believed in me, and they said, hey, let's do a pilot program. So we started a pilot program for what I was learning and believing. And that was, you work with one individual, you work with one couple, and you work with one group, and let's just see what happens. Let's see if it's any good. Let's see if people's lives are changed. Luckily, it was good. It was all right. So people's lives started getting changed. So they said, all right, well, let's start a ministry. And so we did start a ministry. Let's put you in charge of working on the transformation team. So then I began to train others, and it's just so cool how God, and then what did that do? That opened up a job at my workplace. I had experience. I started to run a private practice, and they're like, hey, why don't you become our counselor at our high school? Why don't you work with the kids? So now my job is counseling the students at my workplace. And that's going really well, and now they're like, hey, why don't you step into greater roles of leadership? And, well, where did I learn that? I think I learned, number one, my boss at my work has a very similar personality to Mark. And I think me learning to love him, thrive with Mark as my pastor, thrive in it, being able to accept all aspects of who he is, seeing the good, the bad, the ugly of who he is as a leader, choosing to buckle in to the church. I think that's what ended up setting me up for success. A lot of other people are really struggling. Like some people I think there's like 5 different people who are leaving the organization at the end of that because they're just having a hard time with that. But I'm thriving. I'm like, I love this person. I actually have this internal like love and connection to this leader, and that is opening doors. So I say all that to say that God has used this church to help me in different ways that has taken me from called to a place of commissioned. And I believe that's what's opening the door for me today to get launched from this church into this mission field, is because of the love, acceptance, the belonging, the walking with, the people who've got my back, the people who've believed in me, the people who've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, and really walked with me in my life. And that is why, like, as kind of this reflective thing is to tell you what a great thing that we have here. What a great thing we have here. And it really can, when we buckle in, we don't just put up, but we actually like dial in. Like, no, I'm all in. I'm in. And we grow in character. We grow in acceptance. And again, that goes with marriages, that goes with churches, that goes with organizations. When we do that, God will use it in a very powerful way to change our life and to set us on to catalyze us onto the trajectory of success, and it will change our life. A couple of accelerators, as I'm kind of bringing this thing to a close, that I wanted to kind of leave you guys with is here at this church, really seek opportunities to get involved. Seek opportunities to lead groups. I think I've probably led about 6 to 8 to 10 groups here at the church. Seek ways of connection. Seek going out to eat with people after church. Like, really be a proactive force to get involved. Another big thing for belonging is see if there aren't a couple of people that you want to get closer to, and start meeting with them one-on-one, but eventually invite another couple into that, and eventually another couple or individual if you're an individual or whatever it is, and like do like a monthly thing, like literally like get together every month and do something together. If there's a group, get involved in the group. That's great because it's already structured for you. But if that's not here yet, then meet together monthly as a church family. Eat together. Do something spiritual. I don't know. Read a scripture, discuss it, or eat and then do a worship session, or eat and then kind of talk about what's going on in life. Like, that is a very powerful thing that can lead to deeper relationships with people. And then finally, of course, this message wouldn't be complete without, don't church hop when things get hard. Stick in there. Don't relationship hop when it gets hard. Instead, if it is, and you've determined it's acceptable bad, learn and ask God to do what he needs to do inside of your heart to help you to thrive, not exist, not survive, but to thrive in that relationship, in that church, in that organization. And if you start to fervent petition and bombard heaven with that, hey God, do this work, he's going to answer, and you're going to find yourself thriving in a place that used to be bad to you, and you're going to end up thriving and going with that. So let me go ahead and pray and bless you guys in this area. So Lord Jesus, thank you for this church family. Thank you for Rich, Zoe. Thank you for Mark. Thank you for all the leaders who have poured into my life and into the life of this church. God, I as in being commissioned here as an elder, I just bless what you have done in my life to continue to be poured out in each and every person in this room's life. God, I ask that you would help them become aware of the areas in their heart in which you want to do some deep work, and that in which they're irritated, they're frustrated, they're mad, they're angry at, and that you say, you know what? I'm actually wanting to do something deeper here, and I ask that you would use this church as an instrument to help out with that. I bless this church. I bless everybody here in the name of Jesus.